it's an interesting challenge, but I hope we can handle it. And my main idea here was to think of how traditional iconography can or should be connected to the problems or questions of art. So when we say traditional iconography, we imagine something like this. So if we describe it from point of view of someone who never saw icons before, we would say there are stiff figures and I can say appealing faces. So this probably can be this description. So some gilded details which don't look real, but faces tend to be almost real or kind of. And in many old icons, we see the same thing, very stylized garments and other details, and even the faces sometimes are stylized. So technically, what we see is just the face and lots of details. And the more details we see, the more sacred for many people the icon is, because our eyes just get stuck into analyzing all these curls and leaves and everything else. So lots of decoration makes image become special, specific, but I would say it also makes image become decorative. And officially we can say that iconographers of the past, whom we consider to be the greatest masters, were not mostly talking about the decoration. They were really trying to do something. And some of their followers, some of craftsmen who tried to make their work more beautiful, nice, and lovely, added the decoration. But originally, they were artists. Like the gentleman who, or maybe lady, who created this mosaic, the idea was not to show some perfect image of Christ, but to create an appealing image, an image which would be engaging with you with its emotional, psychological, and other qualities, giving you a feeling of communication, personal relationship. I am saying all these things because I will be comparing it. Or here, we don't really see much. It's from Santa Maria Antiqua, very ancient fresco, but we see that this artist was not trying to perform. He was trying to give us an image, but not to perform certain number of action, first of all. Because when we come to an icon painting school, a regular professional, our teacher would tell us, okay, guys, here how you start an icon. You do the drawing, you cover it with the Sankir, you put first highlight, second, 15, 55, and then the blush, the black lines, and it's done. But the problem is that when we start comparing what is done via this professional approach and by the artists who I think were really professionals, we see two different worlds, because in their case, we can recognize their skills, their procedure, how they achieve the result, but we do not see so much obedience and it's interesting. I don't know the translation. Okay, the main weight in their luggage is not on the technical perfection. Yes, they're not underlining technical perfection as much. Like in this case, it's a very provincial icon. We see some parts are very strange, not anatomically correct, but weird. And from the other hand, there is something which makes it a real image for prayer. And now I wanted probably to ask you a question, if you don't mind answering, if you'd have an idea. What do you think for these artists was the most important part he or she wanted to bring forward? And how did he or she achieve it? Any ideas, Olga, or who is? Yes, Olga?
This icon has big ears. It means that whatever person talks in front of this icon, supposedly this Saint Nicholas hears the prayers.
Yes, yes, that's right. That's exactly right. He is hearing our prayers. He is listening to us. But okay, let's try talking from point of view of visual understanding. Yes, Kester, please. Well, it's again, it's not a lesson, yes, where you have a right answer, wrong answer. We are analyzing things together, yes?
Yeah, the thing that I noticed is that when you're looking at the darkest parts, it's the eyes and the mouth. So your eye immediately registers it as a face. Like it's very, very simple if you just look at the darks. It's like the 2 dots for the eyes and the line for the mouth. And then when you look at it more closely, you see all the other details. But the first thing that immediately leaps out to you is this sort of like kindness or like a friendly expression.
Yes, well, he was carried away, or she was carried away, but drawing this all huge number of hairs, and yet able to constrain himself or herself not to overdo the amount of job. Yes, some certain detail, okay, is overdone, but in overall picture, in overall image, how it was built, we understand this person was not trying to demonstrate how much effort, how much time, how much energy was spent for this. So no, it was a necessary frame for the eyes to appear. So he has spent so much time for carving the frame around this picture, which is teeny tiny, which is just the eyes. But without the frame, the eyes wouldn't work, because they need some support and they are part of the environment as well. So that's how it functions. And in many old icons, we will see this approach of an artist. So having this regular traditional, the ones which we are taught, skills or methods of applying first drawing number 1, then drawing number 2, then the Sankir and other things, but they utilize these methods to achieve an art work, an image which would be appealing not via amount of job performed, but via visual qualities, via its performance as an artwork. And coming to David, I started seeing this from a different point of view. This is one of his drawings, and looking at it, I guess we can also analyze and see that this is a pencil and paper, nothing really special. But the idea is, with this pencil, not to describe you the perfect cheek or nose, but to make something appealing to you. Yes, this portrait is not neutral. It's demanding your attention. It's engaging with you and trying to communicate in some way. Yes, it's not just formally perfect. It's special. So when I compare the old models, I often have the same feeling. The one on the left is perfectly performed, demonstrates wonderful, I don't know, highlights and shadows, but at the same time, it's much less engaging because it's too perfect to be engaged with. And the one on the right, the artist was using all his skills and capacities, possibilities to make image work as an artwork. So we are pleased to look at how it's done. We have a pleasure contacting, we have a pleasure percepting what he is playing on his violin. It's not just 700s of notes which he is following one after another, but it's the way of building up the image. And I'm showing this to compare how we perceive that and not how they're executed. So the one which is a wonderful Byzantine icon is not trying to get into contact with us. It's there, we can pray with it wonderfully, but yet from point of view of the artist who created it, it's not trying to invite us into a certain world, while the one on the right, no matter whether it's an icon or it's a drawing, it is inviting us for some dialogue. And I would say I rather prefer the 2 images on the left, no matter how expensive or old are they, to the one on the right, which is wonderful and great and specific and terrific, and yet not so much talking to us. And to make an image talking to us, we not necessarily have to graduate from Fine Art Academy we can do things like that. So it's some very provincial artist from some Russian countryside, but look how expressive are the eyes or eyebrows of the Mother of God. Or look at the sight of St. Nicholas, like how is he gazing at everybody or at her, yes, or he's looking at Jesus maybe. So anatomy, almost zero. Specific understanding of construction of the hand or size of the hand versus size of the face, almost zero. But how important is this dialogue anyway? So how we are captured by what he has created. And at that moment, I'm thinking like, okay, should I start learning drawing things like that? Not sure, because for these people, it was a natural way of expressing themselves, of rendering the religious images. But I am already loaded with certain files which don't allow me to be so simplistic or natural, okay, in expressing my religious understanding visually. So I'm forced to learn, and I do have to learn from things like this to understand how classically we are supposed to do. But this doesn't mean I have to follow always the same pattern. So it means I have a way to follow, but on my way, I can take turns left and right. So yes, I'm showing this away. You probably saw it in the newsletter. And from a drawing, you can choose a way to the right or to the left. So you get inspired by some angel, which you see in fresco, and you can draw an angel. Yes, a simple angel, which I think I used to draw similar to this, many of them. And they could perfectly stay in my shelves here, waiting for someone to come and pick them and say, oh, wonderful angel. But after having done this, I had a phone call from this local Georgian artist, David, and he said, would you like to come to see me working? And I am coming. And he said, well, I don't want you to see me working. Let's work together. Let's do it like that. You work and I'll be giving you advices. I said, all right. And he says, well, let's see first some images like here. Look how expressive are the things and how little we see the technique with which it was performed. So what was most important for this artist? I say, well, maybe the expression of this face. Good, let's move on. So that was his questions to me, like, what is something worth being embodied in an image? Again, I think it's the character we want to render. It's a specific approach, expression, a specific way of talking to the beholder. Because in this case, it's not the image in itself, in a capsula, but it's an image which is targeted for communication with you, with us, with me, with everybody. So how to make icons communicating with us? That's an interesting question. And David said, okay, let's start from raw. You imagine this image, could be in a church. What would you call to be the main qualities? I say, well, it's only the main qualities I see. I only see the essential things, and no detail is giving me extra weight. It's nothing bothering, nothing heavy, but only what is shown to me. And David said, okay, let's try. You see the white and black. Let's try doing it with you. And you start with white, and maybe you add some color later, but start with large spots, which from the very beginning give you the character of the future image. Like your image is turned, okay, immediately give this turn. Your image is straight, show it. So that's how he suggested me to start. But after he understood it's not so quick to reteach an iconographer, he said, okay, let's try with a still life and do this, Philip. You see some apples, lemons, bottles, go for it. But don't overwork. Don't do too much. You're not forced to demonstrate every little detail of it. Your idea is to capture, your task is to capture the character of these things. And I tried and I arrived to something like this, but now I want you to see I made certain versions of this thing, and I hope they help to understand what is it about. Because this is the final version. That's some product I have produced. Not proud, but just an example. But when we start from the empty black paper, we take some white pencil, white color, whatever, and we start revealing the form right away from the darkness, from zero, from nowhere, only the most essential points, most essential characters. And when we see these, well, all these will be Photoshopped versions, but I'm trying to render the idea. Well, I would say this is not enough for me to understand that this is a bottle, this is an orange, this is a plum. So I continue working and I have little more works. So little more covered, little more revealed, but yet not enough. So I don't understand what are these things and that things. And probably at this moment, I could have stopped. Because as David says, art is supposed to be an activity similar to poetry, where you give a hint, but the viewer or the beholder is the one who completes the sentence. So you begin the sentence, you give these points where the people will see what you mean, but you're not supposed to finish everything. You don't have to complete or accomplish the whole thing, because in this case, the person who would see your image will have nothing to discover. In here, it's your eye which continuously discovers the new shapes. And if there is everything already discovered, it's boring. Okay, it's nice. It could be nice. Okay, I'm not talking about this one. But when everything is revealed, there is no space for the step forward for those who will be looking at it. And that's what I'm thinking as a very important concept for us. Well, I try doing things like that afterwards, which of course are not supposed to be icons in no way, but as little as possible means to reveal something. As little as possible. How little is enough? How little will be okay to have the image completed, accomplished? So that's what came up with this angel, which I hope was not overworked, was not too much loaded. And I continued trying things like this, where the most essential part, which is the face, is visible, but other parts are not. So you only see what you're supposed to look at and not bothered by extra things. And I made this icon of Saint Vladimir, and I was thinking to promote his role as the person who baptized his country in the 10th century. But David has criticized me. He said the cross is taking too much attention. So it's too important for you. So you're not supposed to give so much importance because his personality is more important. Okay, there can be discussions of this kind, like what's supposed to be at the first place. And yet I'm just trying to pose you the problem, how I see it, how I started seeing it. And for me, it's also an interesting step forward, because I used to work with Ectempera and I love it dearly, but Ectempera is, I would say, too quiet. So it doesn't allow you to make mistakes too much. It allows you to be more modest and moderate in rendering things. And like here, I'm not sure it's 100% Ectempera, but I guess it is. Because with Ectempera, it's much simpler to maintain your balance between different things and apply layers after layers. Like if you see some part is too bright, you can glaze it. If you see something is too dark, you can highlight it up. And that's how it works. So that's an interesting thing, how to apply it, this principle using the Ectempera. But I know how not to. So I know that people who did it in the past did great job, knew perfectly, maybe not perfectly, but knew well how to balance all the details. And in our time, it's a very difficult thing because we are used to very bright messages, to everything very much appealing. Not easy for us to keep things quiet without seeking too much attention of the beholder. Like this, even having lots of metal Riza, yeah, metal decoration with bright eyes, with gilding, it's still not so bright as the image like that, because that's the excessive possibilities are tempting. If you can do anything, you may very well do everything. If you don't know how to do, or if you feel like tempted, if you know your customers will like things decorated, you just go for it. Well, the one on the left is decorated too. How you judge, how you understand how little is enough. So this is a very interesting problem. And one more little thing I wanted to say before I'm finishing this is that in images like this, which we used to consider icons, it's a great way for learning. It's a wonderful way for all of us to have, to collect the experience. We learn from how they solve this problem or that problem. But at the same moment, we are not supposed to be 100% always following what they did, because it's our different circumstances, our colors, our paint and size, everything. So it's us who decides how much or how little the image should be revealed. And this is an interesting thing, because that's the moment when the art starts. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Now I'm switching off my screen, and I'd be happy to hear you and your critique, considerations, whatever. Yes, please.
So this is really, really interesting. Thank you so much. And my brain is like, and I'm trying to draw a connection between what you said about the image being like a poem where it's hinting at things, and how the more folk art or more naive painting style is, because I see that when you said that the viewer has to take a step forward into it, when I see the painting where the anatomy is all weird and it's very simple, it's almost like my mind is able to make that into like a real person more easily in a way, because it's almost more like a child's drawing or like a cartoon. So it feels accessible in a certain way, where instead of it being like my eyes are telling me that this is a person that I'm seeing, it's more like my mind is telling me that there's a character here, or I don't know, it's hard to explain. But what I mean, I guess, is that the hinting, making it an anatomically inaccurate, makes more room for it to be like a person that I'm building in my imagination instead of just in my eyes, if that makes sense.
It does have a sense, but the answer is, I will have to show you again this image of this icon. And the answer is tricky, because if you want your voice to be understood or your poetry to be accepted, you need to know what keys to click on your keyboard. So you don't have to type all the words, but you know which key will be recognized by your audience. Okay, so this gentleman or lady lived in a place where he or she didn't have access to the full richness of our visual culture. So therefore, he or she operated this with his genius abilities, but no learning. Okay, so there is very little of studies, but lots of personal, what's the word? Charm, personal engagement with what this person is telling us. It's like a countryside preacher could be preaching to his parish without much education, but with a great faith, with a great fervent and bringing the examples which may sometimes seem weird, but very true, very right ones. So yeah, that's how it works. But we do not have a possibility to follow them because we are different people. So we cannot downgrade. Yes, I know there are some companies which upgrade, but some are downgrading. We cannot downgrade to the level what he had or we had when we were children. So therefore, we have a double work. We need to learn first how our visual culture would accept it. And our culture accepts images built on realistic or more or less realistic way of building things. Yes, you have to know how the nose is built, how the eyes are done, etc. And then you can just do 2 drops and they will indicate the eyes. But first, learning makes your work very precise. So then it can be precise after you learn. And if it is precise and if it is an artistic work, then it's just power of a bomb. If otherwise you start guessing where should I put these 2 dots to make them look like nice eyes, this will not work. So I am trying to promote education anyway. It's not I'm saying like, oh, no, not education. But I'm trying to say that education is not recipe to make you professional. As a professional, you need to know how to do, but you need to be able to reject all your knowledge and just to be able to say 2 words and say, that's it. So I stop sharing. And that's what I think it is. So we might learn from these provincial people how expressive are their faces. We may sometimes borrow the way they approach. I know Olga loves things like that. She's often drawing her icons without really remembering much about anatomy. But from the other point, it's not neglecting it, it's transforming it. So you have to know how to, then you can make mistake which will emphasize what you're saying. So mistakes emphasize what you're saying if they are made on purpose. Sorry, talking too much. Olga, yes, sure.
I think, in my opinion, it's very hard to pick up that appealing details without being without having a good knowledge of how things are drawn, how to highlight expressions, different kind of expressions. Like in that picture that you first shown, it was a man, black and white, and mostly black, and he had expression of sadness or whatever, anger or deep thinking. Without being a very good master, it's hard to pick up those details that would express exactly the main thing.
Okay, I totally agree. I totally agree with you, but I call you not to forget that you're an artist, even while you're learning these things. So like when you're coming to work in circus, to do different kinds of specific movements of your body, you should still remember it's not just technique, it's what you want to do with it. So
yeah, what I wanted to say, you have to do, make a lot of, you have to go through a lot of work before you start picking up those appealing details on your icon or on your picture or whatever. Or maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right. You're right. But if you think about it, your road will be shorter.
Yeah.
Because in every image, you can save time and energy only doing what you think is important.
Yeah, it is a good idea to remember about it and not to go into very small details. But when we are as beginners, tend to fall, to go for small details, perfection, and when you keep in mind that that's not the main thing, then maybe
yes, I'm just calling you to remember what for you to take the brush in hand or pencil. Like, yes, what was your purpose? To create a piece of art which would allow people to pray. Is this fold necessary? Maybe not. Is this curl necessary? Yes, it is. So just evaluate what you're doing from point of view of your final goal with this particular image. Like, do you really want this part in it? Yes, I do. So analyze carefully when you start planning it, when you make it. And otherwise, and it's a great temptation for everybody, because I think it's in our DNA to be craftsmen, to work steadily and step by step arrive somewhere. But it's a different view. Like David, who learned from Ovchinnikov, from other masters, when I was working in his studio, he didn't let me stay near the easel more than like 7 seconds. He said, no, go away, look at your drawing from a distance of, not good in feet, like, okay, it was maybe 7 meters, and if you add a mirror, you look in the mirror, it doubles, so it's 14 meters. So you only see the most essential things. If every several seconds you go away and you only see essential things, you do not allow yourself just to do things which don't work. So that's another thing. Try to allow or find for yourself a space or a place, or at least a mirror, to have a possibility to look at your work from a distance, which will be a way of judging yourself. Like, no, I need to stop. No, I need to remember my teacher's words and I should go away from the easel. Detach. Don't be attached to it to work as a needle and things like that. Otherwise, it's a view of someone who is creating stitches without seeing the picture.
Sometimes it's hard not to get mesmerized, like while you're painting, especially if you're feeling really good about it, you want to spend more time with it because you love it. So then you get sucked in.
Yes, we have to separate these two processes. Like enjoying something is one thing, but performing it and making it become a real thing, it's another. It's a real challenge and it's a nightmare, but that's a good thing. After you're proud of yourself when you know how to stop or when to stop. Or to, I don't know, eliminate certain things, to just delete.
Philippe, I'm connecting with this with Chinese ink painting. That's something that I've studied for several years. And I remember approaching that for the first time because they give you a piece of paper that when you touch ink to it, it just spreads. You cannot control it at all. And some of
they should be away.
Well, 30 years later, that's what they say. But the philosophy behind it as well is that you're not really drawing well, when you look at it, you're not looking at a landscape. You're looking at the state of the person at the time that they painted the landscape. And I'm kind of connecting with what you're saying on those two things, that we have to allow for the medium to have its own voice. And when I've noticed with egg tempera, at some point it becomes very easy to control and I can make it say what I want it to say. I'm assuming with Encaustic, which I've never tried, it's a similar thing to where it has a louder voice than egg tempera.
That's the simplest way you put it. Yes, it's just a louder voice. And you need, like, you're entering a stage and you need to say 3 good words and go away. But these have to be really good words. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. You say it. You continue. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's really good. And that's with ink painting as well. It's the more you try to make it say, the uglier it gets. So you just, and maybe it says something and you're like, I'm not sure I like that, but you have to leave it because it's what it said. So I really enjoyed what you're learning, and it's it feels a little bit like maybe a more Eastern mindset of approaching materials than Western, where we feel like we want to control it, make it really beautiful, make it say exactly what I want it to say. So anyway, I'm kind of thinking about it from that point of view.
Well, here we come to the question, what is beautiful then? Because, like, is beautiful is a perfect realization of my ideas, or do I let things have their own beauty and I just touch them where I think I can help them to make it real. So yes, the David keeps saying, like, look at the surface. Maybe something new is happening here. Just notice. Don't forget to notice everything you're aware of. Be aware of everything. And then you don't have to work so hard. So yes, it's a big challenge, but it's really interesting. I don't know. It is inviting to some new path, because I've been doing it for many years, and I feel like, okay, what can be the area of getting more perfect in my path? So I should just put my energy into. And here I see the whole new world. Like, do less, and that will be the way. Do not try to overwhelm the viewer with your skills and abilities. Just do little. That should be enough. Olga, you're saying something?
Yeah. I wanted to, if anyone, if maybe someone also has something to say, but I wanted, when we have time, I wanted you to go back to the two images that you showed at the beginning. It was Jesus Christ and an angel. And you were saying that the angel is not as appealing as Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to just not to analyze, because but just to show in details how, like, for me it's not that obvious that the angel,
I think it's some warrior, but
Gabriel?
anyway, yes.
Is it Gabriel?
No, I think it's some warrior, because he
warrior.
is having some,
So
yeah.
in my opinion, it has this image has some story behind.
It does. Of course it does, but we can compare them.
But why you say it's not as appealing as the other? That's what I don't know.
No, that's what we're here for. That's what we are here for. Now the question is, which one you prefer to have at home?
Well, Jesus, of course, Jesus Christ, because like those two images serves different purposes, I think.
No, not because of subject, but I'm asking how it is performed, how it's executed. And I would say the image of Christ is more deep from point of view of the art being put on service of prayer. Yes, it's less loud, it's more modest, it's more quiet, and yet in this quietness we hear a certain voice of the author who made it. And when we look on the left, we see much more energy used to perform it. Yes, we have very well applied all details. Yes, we have lots of highlights, shadows, curls, everything, which is done in a perfect way. And yet at the same time, there is much less this personal presence of someone who is talking to us. That's what I'm trying to say. So he is like, I'm supposed to tell you this, this, and this, and I'm doing it. While the other one is saying, look, guys, I'm a professional iconographer, but you will not notice it because I'm just talking to you directly about this, 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 and this. And if you want to analyze, you will see the highlights and other things. But if you don't want to bother, you will just see the message I'm trying to deliver. So on the one on the left, I rather see words. On the one on the right, I rather see image or message which he's trying to deliver. So that is what I'm trying to consider or capture. Okay, so again, it may be also a question of experiencing these questions for many times. So just trying to.
It's probably I'm not as experienced. I'm not near even close to your experience. It's the same as poetry. When you first write first time, and then you go back and you think it's beautiful, and then when in a few years you go back to your first poetry,
Favorite, yes.
and you see, oh my God, how I was thinking this is beautiful. It's probably the same thing. You see it, and I am at this point. I probably I don't see it, and I don't feel it. I think both images are good.
Okay. Okay, no, my
Sorry.
idea is not to say this is good, this is bad. My idea to try to illustrate my questions. Yes, what am I supposed to want from my work? Yes, what requirements should I put on my work in order to move forward? And this is mostly it. So what can be the thinking process? What's behind? What's the message? What's the intention of the person when he was doing this or that? And this is it.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Hillary, maybe you say some words. I don't know if you're so silent member of our community, let's say that way. I do not hear you, maybe because your microphone has to be put in a horizontal position. It's not working. We do not hear you anyway. Is it possible you do something with it? No, we do not hear you yet. No, nothing, no sound at all. No, not yet. So sad. Okay, maybe you try to reattach the microphone somehow else. I don't know. What's it? Okay, struggling. We will hear you when you fix it up. In the meantime, I maybe should ask if anybody else would, I don't know, wish to say some words or ask some questions or whatever.
I really like what you're saying. It's extremely inspiring to, ask us to question what we're doing. And I feel like though, when I start something like that, to look at it, it comes across as very unauthentic, almost like, I'm imitating what now you're doing. And it's no longer my voice I'm imitating. Is that common? Because I'm trying, it's new. It's going to be new. It's going to be a different way than we've been working.
Yes.
And so it's not mine yet. It's, I have, I want to say something more with my work, but I'm going to say it in a different way that's more imitative at first, rather than authentically straight from me. Does that sound, do you understand what I'm saying?
I'll rephrase it and I'll say what I understand. You will say, is it right or not?
Okay.
So what I sense you're trying to say that when we have a model, we follow it. It gives us always this temptation or demonstrates on our work. It shows up in our work when we accomplish it, that it was done from something. So our work becomes secondary if we have a model. Yes, it looks like.
Yes, like we're imitating that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, nobody says imitating. I never say this word.
No, that's my word.
I said capturing, but yes, capturing can be possible with thousands of different ways, which you will never guess what was the source. So it has to be your version. It must be your own version, in which you may be like captured by, I don't know, you may be fascinated by certain smile or view or sight or line or anything. So we are not supposed to know what was your inspiration. That's what David keeps saying.
Capture, not imitate, capture.
No. Yeah. Well, okay, let's put it that way. In your image, you need to have some engine, some core, some central line, which will become the main for you. Like, okay, you're writing a book. What's going to be most important for you in this book? I'm willing to speak about, I don't know, the depth of something, how you do it. I'm building up certain events so they give this sensation. That's how it works. So imitation does not work because really it is your brain functions like recognizing something, like Google image search. Okay, where did I see this image? Oh yes, that's where I saw it before. So no, it's opposite. You just try to find some expression which may by expression be similar, but in everything else is different. And it's not imitation. I may find some images to share, not sure where, but okay, I'll try to find something.
Well, it is very inspiring, and it's going to be challenging too, very challenging.
The easiest illustration, you try to find some impressionist artists who were copying classic artists. So it's like Van Gogh copying someone before him, or Michelangelo learning from someone before him. So it's their version, and you may never know what was the model. And if you see the model, you will not understand it was, because Michelangelo or you will see something specific which nobody else will, or probably will, but no, it's completely different story. No. Well, you try, okay? You try, and if you feel it's becoming an imitation, then it will be questioned, okay? But
yes,
I bet you will not have this question, because you will be carried away in your side, in your own way, in your path, because you will just say, let's make it different.
Well, and this is like, something we don't hear as, somebody who's painting icons. You hear more of, it's less your voice, but this is your, the message you want to come through. So
Yes.
It's very exciting as an artist. It's very exciting to say, wow, to come from that perspective.
Well, that's what we capture. Sorry, Hillary?
That was me. Yes, I think
Yes,
I got the microphone working.
Good. Well,
I was just saying that listening to all this about the idea of copying, and I've only been doing it a couple of years, so I'm still trying to develop my own ideas. But what my direction has been with Umbrian Gothic style. So the Sienese school, Duccio di Boninsegna sort of thing. And a little while ago, I just decided to try doing a copy of the face of the Rucellai Madonna by Duccio. And I had it, I had a photograph of it on my screen, and I was copying it as carefully as I could. And I'd done a pretty detailed pencil drawing, and I transferred. And I did this painting that was satisfactory as a painting, but in the end, I came out of a kind of trance when I was finished it, and I realized that it really just didn't look anything at all like Duccio di Boninsegna. And I put a picture of it on my Facebook page, and the people who looked at it said, well, no, it's yours. We can tell from looking at it, since we've looked at all your other work, that this is your painting, maybe based on the Sienese Duccio style. And at first I was kind of, I was a little disappointed, because I really wanted to make painting look like Duccio. But I got to the end of this thing, and I had this thing that looked like something that I had done. and I was a little bit disappointed, because I thought, well, I'll never be Duccio. And then, of course, the obvious answer is, well, no, you're never going to be Duccio. You're just going to be you, sorry. But I think it's okay. I've been trying to convince myself that it's okay to start by emulating or approaching someone else's style, a classic sacred art style. But it's also all right to not get it exactly. Like, you don't have to get it exactly. And it will eventually, all by itself, because it can't help but be your work, because you're the one doing it. You'll eventually, even without trying, turn it into a thing that is yours specifically.
Thank you, Hillary. No, I was just willing to add that it's not the idea of making it like yours or not yours. It's the idea that in your circumstances you feel different, and you feel necessity to change things, because that's, in your world, people used to do things like that. And from the other hand, yet we can inherit their message, like what message did he or she want to render, building up this icon. And that's what we can try to be faithful in, because how can I say, I'm not sure I'm good in making comparison with music, but it's very easy to change the tone and bring it in too much pathos, or make it too popular or too lovely or too decorative. So I would say maintaining this level of dialogue, which model suggests, yes, model can suggest a certain seriousness, certain understanding of what are the values, and that's what we try to capture. So these, it's not a small talk, it's not a talk of a scientists or scholars, it's just a specific discussion which is led between people who understand each other, but which is not falling into any of the heresies or temptations, okay? So this is the most difficult part for me, because the brain always wants to bring this and this and this, and it's like, oh, it's no more faithful to what I receive. Yes, we give back, like it's like translation of gospel or other sacred books into other languages. Yes, like I brought this forward already. If you come to Northern land, you have to translate, please give us this day our daily fish, because that's the essential thing for these people. And if you find the right type of fish, you'll be a good translator. It will not be a copy or imitation, it just will be a good translation. So that's what we are doing. We're translating these old manuscripts painted, or old images painted, into something which would work for our contemporaries, trying to keep this essential mood, I don't know, content they try to deliver in the same way, without making it jokey, making it lovely or something, or too strict or severe. And that's hard. That's not easy. Well,
and it's also possible that different people in different parts of the world have a different audience. Like the people that I'm trying to communicate with in Seattle might have a different visual culture than, you know, people in New Zealand or whatever.
Of course, but in anyway, we do capture what is, even if you hear Georgian people speaking, you hear whether they argue or not. Yes, you hear it's some foreign language, but you hear the tone they speak in. So the same about your image, like, is it serious or not? How serious it is? Maybe too serious. Is it like rendering the models, or is it your own discovery process which you reveal through this image? So yes, and of course it will be different from China, for Seattle, for Georgia, Russia. Yes, interesting, very inspiring. Thank you, Shari, for saying, pointing this out, this topic of imitation.
I have a question that's a little bit more on the practical, like materials. I know that you and Sarah were talking about how different mediums have louder voices, or, and I noticed that some of the examples from David's work was using really thick, chunky paint where there's like a lot of noise and a lot of like, kind of like chaotic detail in the actual brush stroke, or not chaotic, because the brush stroke's controlled, but the paint itself is making these like gloppiness.
Okay.
And I studied, my first icon teacher is an Episcopal named Peter Pearson. And a lot of times he would have his students, before they started painting, after they prepared the board, sponge paint and make sort of like a textured or like blobby background. Then they would transfer the image and paint on that. And I was wondering if, and I didn't like doing that because I was still like wanting to control how it looked. So I was uncomfortable with the chaotic background, but now I'm starting to see that connection to what your teacher was doing.
Not sure. Well, let me bring one of them forward, and I hope I may probably clear or clarify what I meant. So if we look at them, well, this actually is a very teeny piece, maybe 8 inches high, something like that, maybe 7 inches. Well, kind of. And if we enlarge it, or if we look at it from point of view of even how we see egg tempera, we do see layers. What was made first, what was made second. And in this case, well, photograph not always would render things, but our perception is conditioned also by technique we see applied, like wet watercolor. We feel how the color spreads on the wet surface. So here, I think we can capture how the medium was struggling with the brush, or brush was struggling with the medium. And I think that was his idea, like that's what he wanted us to see, that it was not smooth. It was not just a desire to make it nice and perfectly looking, but it's like building out of pieces of wax with color. It's not so much similar to a brush, but it's rather similar to someone putting the paint with the knife or something like that. So I think that's what he wanted to achieve, to feel the energy of applied pieces or particles or strokes. And here the texture is born when you try to achieve what you want to achieve. Because I know that some iconographers do use sponges, but I would say it's for variety, or for your texture, your surface to look more interesting, as you feel you can't achieve it with a brush. So they substitute brush work with the sponges. But from the other hand, I would say brush has an energy. Even though your brush strokes not always are visible, you do feel the energy with which the paint was applied. And with the sponge, these relaxed touches are not transferring any energy. So that for me is a problem. Not sure. So in some case, I may wish to use sponge, but I can't imagine the case. So
I use sponges all the time.
ah, okay. So maybe you
I feel
have
like
special
I'm
purpose.
cheating. It's because I only took one course using egg tempera, particularly from an iconographer, and so I'm having to make things up as I go along. With
Inventing,
technique,
okay.
With technique, but I also had a book from an egg tempera painter who's not an iconographer or a sacred artist, but named Ku Shadler, who does very beautiful, quite stylized, but sort of contemporary Renaissance paintings. She does portraits mostly, and she does them in egg tempera. And she has, I just thought I'd let you know that, Kester, that Ku Shadler's book has a huge survey of all different kinds of techniques of applying egg tempera and the different kinds of effects that you get. And you probably won't hear it from an iconographer because they just use brushes. But she does crazy, scary things like splattering, and she does little drops and little, dabs and things, and she gets these amazing textures. And that I haven't tried any of that scary stuff, but it's very interesting. Her book is very interesting, and she's done a lot of research into the technical end of things. So it's like this is like 25 euros. She'll send it to you in the post with a nice note, so it's worth getting, I think.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Good, looks interesting. Yes, I'm checking parallelly, and it looks like very interesting research. Indeed, it is. Okay.
I wanted to ask Philip, because you're doing this encaustic now, is it changed the way you apply your egg tempera?
Oh, tricky question. Let me think. You know what? No. Well, I do not work much with egg tempera now, but it's just a different language. Because like classical for me would be how you translate Russian into Italian. In Russian, you would say, like, how are you? Normal. In Italian, molto bene, so very good. So, and it's normally one technique to say things differently than the other. So no, it's just different way of talking. Just, yeah, different performances, different kinds of things. And as like now Olga is preparing this egg tempera thing, we constantly keep like talking, like whether it's okay to show this, where it should be this connected to that. I constantly think that egg tempera is a wonderful medium because it's, for iconography, is probably the best because it's wonderfully balanced. So it allows you to build up your speech in a way that at the end you achieve a certain good result, almost guaranteed. So there is no need for so much alertness and freshness, which you need in Encaustic, because there you just really have to like do 3 strokes, which have to be enough. You cannot allow yourself to make more, or otherwise, well, Encaustic can be cold or hot. You probably know that. So what I like is the hot one because it really gives the expression. Because many people work with what is called cold encaustic, is when wax is diluted with something, with water, with casein, with things which allow it to become similar to egg tempera, just with better smoothness. So it's super egg tempera. Casein with diluted wax becomes like super egg tempera, which allows you many things which egg tempera does not allow. But from the other hand, it's something you want, yes. If like, okay, I'm having this image. What do I want for this image to be? Do I want it to be smooth? Do I want it to be more expressive, bright, dark? What do you want from it? And from here starts all your choice of materials, techniques, brushes, and everything. All this is conditioning you. But yes, as Olga said, we do first need to learn the language, because you make mistakes in the language and you are understood only if mistakes are put in the right places, or if you modify things in the right way. So that's why we do make these courses, because we think that you build the structure and then out of the structure you take different things and they become like a play. Like ding dong dong. Oh, that's what the melody you mean. Because in the melody you give a quotation of what people used to see as a system. Am I explaining myself? So, okay, thank you. Well, I probably should find a better way of saying it. Thank you. Okay, any more questions? Shari, yes?
Not a question.
Kelly, yes?
Yeah. I've been listening, throughout the whole time that you've been talking about making it your own, using less. So when you take a class where there's 20 students and you have a prototype and you're looking at 20, not really different, but almost the same as the prototype. It's not really your personality. It's not your personality coming through. Well, let's put it this way. You're not making the image. There's not as much expression. And sometimes when a student is painting, sometimes you see a little difference in, say, the icon that they're painting. So I often think that, putting your mark and putting your whatever, sometimes the eyes, when you're painting the eyes, almost look like a reflection of your own eyes. I don't know if you've ever noticed that when you're painting, like people will say, oh, this resembles, your eyes kind of look like this, or something like that. So I'm kind of alluding to the fact that when you see a lot of examples of a prototype that's supposed to look like the same prototype, and every student has a different way of applying the paint or using the brush or whatever, and finding what you're looking for, and you can, like you've shown so many examples of faces of Christ, let's say, for example. So many different artists have different approaches to that. So I can see where you're saying individualism, making it your own, finding that what you want to express, what you're trying to express to the viewer. So that's sort of, in my mind, I keep thinking of seeing all those 20 different 20 of the same prototype, but finding that, you know, the icon, like it speaks to you, speaks to the viewer. Trying to get that, trying to achieve that.
So,
Am I making sense? Am I making sense?
okay, I will rephrase what I understand, if I understand correctly. So you're saying, like, if you have 20 students in a class, which from the same model make their own versions, how can these versions be individual? Is it right?
Yeah, that's kind of like, just like with the class, with the drawings, you know, you saw so many different students who submitted their drawings. You know, Olga had the prototype. And then you could see how looking at all the exams, which were wonderful because you learn from just, you know, of course, her constructive criticism, not criticism, evaluation, let's put it that way, her suggestions, which was really fantastic. You know, you're learning along in the lesson, okay? But also you see individualism in their drawings. You know, there's not exactly like Olga's.
Okay.
So it's like trying to find, but you know, especially the ones where you're drawing the portrait of a religious figure. It could have been Jesus, it could have been a saint, it could have been, you know, the 4 classes that we've had. Anyway, so and you can see differences in just the approaches. So you're constantly reworking and revising and trying to make it appealing to the viewer, communicate with the viewer, making it harmonious. You know what I'm saying? All of those things.
Okay.
Okay.
So what's the problem then?
No problem. No question. I'm just making a comment. I'm just
Okay.
trying to
So that
get
was a
it-
comment.
Everybody, you know, sees things differently or you know, understands things. I'm just trying, in my mind, I keep seeing all these different icons and saying, okay, so what are we trying to do here? And basically your talk is basically about that, is trying to find.
Is to make it yours. Like, you see this thing which you like, but to make it convincing, it has to be yours. Like, okay, it can be about anything. You have learned about, I know, specific discovery of scientists, which you want to share with us. But to share with us, you need to know what you're talking about. Look, guys, I have discovered this and this, and I like it because this and this. And this is your opinion. That's what we treasure. Not that you will take and read, okay, guys, you know what? This will be such a chemical formula which will help you in this and that. What? So if you make it yours, we trust you. If you just repeat someone's, we will not. And allow me, please, to share the screen. I just want to share one of the students' works at our latest 2nd course. So there are certain mistakes which Olga will correct, and yet the person who is making it is not copying, as it's constructing this image with possibly some mistakes. Of course, I would say, well, this eye is a little too close and other things, but yet there is no desire to imitate. So it's your own building process. And that's what it is. Yes, you are building it according to models which you have. And yes, you do not imitate, you're just following your predecessors, and in whatever you can be faithful. That's it.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and sorry for talking so long. I should learn not only paint economically, but also talk economically, I guess.
You're fine. You're fine.
Too many words. Too many words. So I'm hoping to see you again, if you like, to the 25th of July. And I think I will make another newsletter soon. It will be exception, because usually it's like once in 2 months, in 3 months. But now I will announce, hello guys, this is the link, and we expect everybody who wants to. And we probably will have it open. So it will not be by invitation, private, secret, but just really open to those who receive the newsletter. Sorry for confusion. I was just afraid of having a crowd and not being able to manage, but I think it will be, it's better to open to everybody. So any more specific question? Hillary, yes?
Yes, sir. Do you have anything more to say about your idea of a kind of wiki, like an interactive database?
Yes,
of
I'm
all
working on it.
these?
Yes.
More.
I have an
One more.
I have a IT friend who is not just doing his job. He is often saying, Philip, you need to learn this and you do it by yourself. So I'm doing the interface now, which should work first. And when it's functioning, I will be inviting everybody to bring something, but yet, because I have already had 2 experiments where it didn't work perfectly, and I don't want to fail again. So sorry for previous, yes, which were not as good as I wanted, but this one should be more simple, but better functioning. Yes, Shari?
I just have a question about the next class. And you said it was like in September, you think it's going to be? You're not, and the supply list for that. I know the last time I ordered egg tempera, the pigments, it was back ordered and it took me, instead of just taking a week or so, it took me 2 months to get it. So I was just wondering when you would put the supply list for that class out a little, if you could get it out a little early so we can kind of get that order in case it's back ordered.
Well, I actually have it published. So we have this page dedicated to the egg tempera course, and it has a special section which says download PDF with all supplies.
Is it on your website?
Well, we now have this website for learning iconography, which is iconography.online. So yes, it's there. Yeah, it should be there.
I will look. Thank you.
Yeah, well, things are extending, and I'm sorry, maybe sometimes confusing, but we try to keep it as basic as possible, like raw amber, and that's it, I guess.
Okay.
Well, maybe some white, but it's very short list. So yeah, nothing special.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Well, any more specific questions or non-specific or something you'd like to criticize? Any words? Or is it enough for today? We're almost 1 hour and 20 minutes. Wow, that's been a long time. Well, then I expect your questions to come up for the July 25 or before that time, if you'd like me to cover something of that in my future lecture. And I hope to see you again then. Okay, so thank you for joining us, and keep in touch. If you have any questions, please write down.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
See you in July.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
everybody.
See you in July.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a good day. Have a good 4th in
Thank
America.
you, Kelly. Thank you. 4th of July. Yes, it's coming. Yes, it is. Okay. Very good.
Okay, great seeing you.
Thank you.